Hey y'all, welcome to the Breach and Attack Simulation Showcase for January 2023. Today I'm going to be rolling through the progress I've made so far on the Breach and Attack Simulation seg and how we plan to integrate going forward. So, what is Breach and Attack Simulation? Assuming you have no prior knowledge of Breach and Attack Simulation, we can consider Breach and Attack Simulation to be a security testing method for validating application endpoint security controls. That includes things like running web applications where you're running maybe Ruby on Rails application or a PHP application, or if you have an endpoint deployed where you actually deploy inside of a Docker container or you deploy inside of AWS EC2 instance, any type of infrastructure you're deploying to, being able to test the different security controls on that to make sure your operating system, your actual application that you're running on top of that are running in a secure manner. BAS differentiates itself from things like dynamic analysis because it's more, as opposed to looking at purely the application side, BAS is focusing on whether you can actually exploit a particular vulnerability. So if a vulnerability has been detected by a DAST scanner, you'd typically take that report if you're a penetration tester or a red teamer. You'd actually go through and test, hey, are there any mitigations in place? Or can I actually exploit this vulnerability that we think is a possibility? So BAS is sort of all about helping prioritize the risk and risk management and doing some on top of your vulnerability assessment. So the vision for breach and attack simulation at GitLab. So the vision consists of allowing organizations to simulate attacker techniques as part of their DevSecOps lifecycle. So that's sort of looking at, say, if you use GitLab CI, you'd be able to integrate directly into that with your existing vulnerability tools in some way, where you're able to take those vulnerability tools and then on top of that, adding the ability for attacker techniques and simulating those attacker techniques as part of that lifecycle. So that can be through GitLab CI, or it could potentially be other things similar to how we run the Kubernetes agent, for example, where we can have continuous testing and breach and attack simulation against the mitigations you've put in place for vulnerabilities you detected in a prior part of your security testing cycle. The goals for this are essentially to curate attack scenarios. So we want to be able to create an inventory of different attack techniques that are being used. Similar to if you look at the meter attack framework, it sort of enumerates all various techniques that can be used by attackers. And on top of that, it's sort of picking and choosing which one of those are going to be efficient at testing security controls that are in place. That could be things like command injection. If we use dynamic analysis, we're able to detect command injection. So when you've detected command injection, that's a good attacker scenario to simulate, where you would simulate, hey, I've injected an arbitrary command. Now on top of that, exfiltrate some data, and simulating that will allow us to report on exploited vulnerabilities and what vulnerabilities have been mitigated and where risk has been mitigated because some type of security control that you've put in place, where we can report that as being, hey, it's a mitigated vulnerability because there's something in place that actually prevented it in my test environment to be exploited. On top of that, I've been going ahead and been collaborating. So the Breach and Attack Simulation seg has been welcomed with open arms in GitLab. It's been pretty fun. I've been working with the Threat Insights team and Govern in terms of vulnerability dashboards and creating generic reports for BAS and adding on the existing capabilities I've created with the Nuclei Analyzer, where I'm able to integrate directly into the existing reports through what Threat Insights have provided me. The dynamic analysis team has been super helpful. I've been collaborating with them quite a lot on how I display vulnerabilities and exploit information. And then vulnerability research has been super helpful in terms of how I've been planning my approach at creating these different exploits and even injecting custom exploit payloads and on top of things like active checks that DAST supports. So next I'll jump right into a demo of some of the existing functionality that's been deployed. So if I go to this Nuclei templates job that I've created, we can see that it's using my custom Nuclei Analyzer Docker image. And this Nuclei Analyzer, what this is a custom scanner, which is compliant with the GitLab security report format. So this is a generic format that you can use for any security tool as long as you export and then so in Nuclei I export the JSON lines report from Nuclei, and I'm able to take that and import it into GitLab by running this Nuclei analyzer tool to get it into the appropriate formats. I've updated this recently to include the request and response information, as well as adding the ability to use the interact sh extension for Nuclei. So that integration for Nuclei actually goes ahead and provides, using the interact sh service, it tests for out-of-band connections. So it will dynamically provision a unique payload against os.me, and os.me, what that will do is it's a unique payload, and that unique payload I inject into the template using a custom Nuclei template, and that payload will actually, in the command injection portion, it'll actually have a callback to that unique payload against the interact sh server. And so doing this, I'm able to go ahead and add some additional details into the vulnerability report. So if I come here, we can see that we have this down vulnerable web app command injection vulnerability. If we look at that, we can see here's our existing information that we get in any type of DAST report. But on the evidence section, we can see that I've injected using Threat Insights generic report format. We can see that I've done a post request to interact sh, and I've included the contents of Etsy password just to prove that I was able to read a file off the file system through my exploits that I provided. And then we can see here that interact sh responded with this custom payload, which allows me to verify that in this job, I was able to get that callbacks end-to-end and out-of-band testing being done here. So we can see here there's a payload, which I'm using that custom that for IP. In this command injection, the way I've structured the exploit is for ping, it'll do a DNS request against the hostname. And then on top of that, I've injected some custom PHP, which will go ahead and actually do a post request, including the contents of Etsy password. And so doing that, I'm able to validate that we've got these additional details. We're able to validate that there's an interact sh request with that unique payload at the particular timestamp during the testing of this pipeline. We can see that we can also go ahead and create an issue based off of this, where we can create the issue that has details and the identifiers. So I've created a custom namespace called Nuclei template, so there's no collisions with existing templates in DAST. And so what I intend to do is have customers start adding this additional job in, where they're adding an additional DAST report artifact, which will amend or append to the end of their DAST report, so they'll see vulnerabilities from Nuclei on top of their existing vulnerabilities, which I think will be quite good. There's some templates in Nuclei that I want to add around command injection, where we take a more active approach, and I've already talked to the dynamic analysis team for having them come on board and start using the interact sh, whether it's self-hosted or creating our own command server for proving out-of-band connections. Cool. And then just an appendix. There's the links to the handbook issues and the new Nuclei Analyzer custom scanner for DAST, which is adding some breach and attack simulation capabilities. If we look at the handbook page, we can see the product affinity, and we can see a list here of the jobs to be done, where I go through different attack scenarios that we want to be capturing. And in terms of metrics, very much want to look at, I noticed that there's a Nuclei action that's been created recently for GitLab actions, GitHub actions. And so with GitHub actions, I want to be able to see if we can get a similar uptake in that for GitLab users. If there's any questions or anything, you can contact me on Slack internally, or you can go ahead and submit a GitLab issue in my personal project to get in touch. Thanks. See you all.